They walked on this trail and were never seen again. When a trail is officially closed, it's not just the path that vanishes. Sometimes it's the people too. We've all heard stories of hikers getting lost on well-marked trails. But what about when the trail itself is meant to be forgotten? When funding gets cut, when nature reclaims the land, when a path that was once clear becomes a ghost of what it was, the wilderness gets infinitely more dangerous. These aren't stories about rookies wandering into the woods unprepared. These are the accounts of experienced people, confident in their abilities, who stepped onto a path and into a mystery that, in some cases, is still unsolved. Today, we're looking at some of the most mysterious disappearances on America's forgotten routes, where the path ended and the mystery began. Section 1. The Vanishing Path. Before we get into these chilling stories, you have to understand how a trail, a route carved into the earth by generations of footsteps, can simply vanish. It happens quietly, almost invisibly, across thousands of miles of public land in America. And the reasons are as complex as the wilderness itself. A lot of the time, it starts with money. Trails, especially ones managed by the U.S. Forest Service, are often victims of budget cuts. When you have to choose between funding trail maintenance and fighting catastrophic wildfires, the trails often lose. A path that isn't maintained is a path that starts to die. Brush creeps in and swallows the markers. Fallen trees block the way. Without trail crews, the path just fades back into the landscape, erased as if it was never there. Then you have the forces of nature, which seem to get more extreme every year. Climate change is silently reshaping these trails. Wildfires don't just burn trees. They can scorch the soil so badly that landslides wipe a trail clean off a mountainside. Major floods can turn a gentle hiking path into a treacherous, boulder-filled gorge overnight. In Idaho, sections of the Centennial Trail have been so ravaged by fire and overgrowth that they've become virtually impassable, almost ceasing to exist for future generations. When a trail gets too hazardous or expensive, land managers have to make a tough call: decommissioning. They might block it off, take it off new maps, and delete it from guidebooks. The trail officially becomes a ghost. But the memory of that path can linger on older maps or in the minds of hikers who walked it years ago. And that's where the real danger lies. Someone might follow one of these phantom trails, thinking it's safe, not knowing the bridges are gone. The path has crumbled, and the way forward leads not to a beautiful view, but to a dead end in a wilderness that has no intention of letting them go. It's a perfect storm of neglect, policy, and nature's raw power. And for the people who walk these trails, the consequences can be the most serious imaginable. This is the world of America's vanishing trails, where the line between a path and a peril is frighteningly thin. It was in this world that our first subject, Geraldine Largay, found herself in the summer of 2013, when one simple mistake turned a bucket list adventure into a tragedy that would take years to fully uncover. Section 2. The Last Journal of Geraldine Largay. Geraldine Largay wasn't a rookie. At 66, the retired nurse was living her dream. Her trail name was Inchworm, a nod to her slow but steady pace on the Appalachian Trail. She started in West Virginia, hiking north with her best friend. For months, they shared the journey. Her husband, George, was her support crew, meeting her at road crossings with supplies. The whole thing was a well-oiled machine, a carefully planned adventure. But in New Hampshire, the plan changed. Her friend had to leave because of a family emergency. Geraldine, determined to reach the trail's end at Mount Katahdin, decided to push on alone. On July 22, 2013, Geraldine was in a notoriously tough part of the trail in Maine, the 100-mile wilderness. This stretch is considered the most remote section of the entire 2,180-mile path, a vast expanse of forest with no towns and no cell service. That morning, other hikers saw her at a shelter. She was in good spirits, planning to meet George the next day. But she never showed up. Sometime that day, Geraldine stepped off the trail to find a private spot to use the bathroom. A simple act. But when she turned to go back, she couldn't find the path. The forest there is incredibly dense. The trail is just a thin ribbon through a sea of green. Just a few feet off, everything looks the same. And despite her experience, friends said Geraldine had a poor sense of direction and would get flustered. In this terrain, that would be fatal. Panic set in. At 11 a.m., she tried to text her husband. The message, found years later, was chilling. In some trouble. Got off trail to go to BR. Now lost. Can you call AMC to see if a trail maintainer can help me? Somewhere north of Woods Road. XWX. The message never sent. No signal. She tried again the next day. Lost since yesterday. Off trail 3 or 4 miles. Call police for what to do, please. Again, it never sent. She would try to text a dozen more times, climbing higher for a signal that wasn't there. When she missed their meeting on July 24th, George reported her missing, sparking one of the biggest search and rescue operations in Maine's history. For weeks, hundreds of people searched by air and on foot. They found nothing. It was as if Inchworm had vanished. For 2 years, her family waited. And all that time, the heartbreaking truth was in a collapsed tent, just 3,000 feet from the trail she couldn't find. The truth is, Geraldine did exactly what a lost hiker is supposed to do. She stayed put. She found a small patch of high ground and set up her tent. She had her gear, food, and water, and she waited for rescue. But in the dense terrain, her campsite was practically invisible. As the days turned into weeks, she kept a small journal, a record of fading hope and quiet acceptance. She survived for an incredible 26 days. As her food ran out, she knew she wouldn't be found alive. In one of her final entries, she wrote a message to whoever found her. "When you find my body, please call my husband George and my daughter Carrie," it read. "It will be the greatest kindness for them to know that I am dead and where you found me, no matter how many years from now." Her remains were finally found by a forestry worker on October 15, 2015, more than 2 years later. She was only about a mile from the trail, but in that wilderness, it might as well have been 100. Her story is a devastating reminder that even on a world-famous trail, the wilderness is always waiting. A single misstep can lead you down a path that doesn't exist, a path with no return. It's a lesson that would be repeated in a different wilderness for our next missing hiker, a man who walked into a snowstorm and never walked out. Section 3. The Ghost of the PCT, Chris Fowler. Chris Fowler, known as Sherpa on the Pacific Crest Trail, was a 34-year-old from Ohio. In 2016, he set out to hike the 2,650-mile trail stretching from Mexico to Canada. He wasn't rushing. He was savoring the journey, taking his time to photograph everything. This slow pace meant that by October, he was entering the high mountains of Washington very late in the season, a time when the weather there can be dangerously unpredictable. On October 12, 2016, Chris was dropped off at the White Pass trailhead. He had just 350 miles left to reach the Canadian border. Friends who saw him that day said he was worried about a big storm that was rolling in, the remnants of a typhoon that was being hyped as a massive weather event. His last confirmed purchase was in the nearby town of Packwood that day. His last cell phone ping was near White Pass. He was hiking straight into a brutal storm of freezing rain and high winds. And then he was gone. On October 30th, Chris Sherpa Fowler was officially reported missing. The search was huge, but it was also plagued by confusion. The core of the mystery quickly centered on unconfirmed sightings. Two bear hunters claimed they saw a man matching Chris's description on October 22nd, 10 days after he was last seen, but a staggering 62 miles north of where he started. This single, unverified tip pulled search resources far to the north, a lead that many now believe was a mistake. The area where Chris vanished, the Goat Rocks Wilderness, is beautiful but brutal, especially in October. The trail is exposed and can be buried by snow in an instant, making it incredibly easy to get lost. Many experienced hikers believe the storm is the key. They think Chris, caught in the relentless, freezing rain, likely died of hypothermia within 48 hours of leaving White Pass. But what makes this case so baffling is the complete lack of evidence. After years of searching by official teams and volunteers organized by his family, not a single piece of his gear has ever been found. Not his backpack, not his tent, not a shoe. Nothing. It's as if the storm just swallowed him whole. His family has refused to give up, maintaining a powerful social media presence and chasing every lead. A frustrating what if hangs over the case. Chris owned a personal locator beacon, but it was never activated, possibly because the subscription wasn't paid. We'll never know. Theories range from a hidden fall to foul play, though that seems unlikely. The truth remains buried somewhere in the Cascade Mountains. The trail where Chris Fowler was last seen isn't decommissioned, but in that storm, under feet of snow, it effectively vanished, becoming a deadly path to oblivion. The stories of Geraldine Largay and Chris Fowler are terrifying. They show how quickly a dream trip can become a nightmare. The volunteer search and rescue teams who look for people like them are absolutely vital. These are people who drop everything to search for the lost, often with very little funding. If these stories move you, think about looking up your local volunteer SAR team. A donation can help them get the equipment and training they need to bring people home. But sometimes, a disappearance has nothing to do with a vanishing trail or a storm. Sometimes, it defies all explanation. Section 4. The Girl Who Walked Behind a Tree. The date is July 17, 1981. The place, Yosemite National Park. 14-year-old Stacy and Eris was on a horseback trip with her father, George, and a small group. They were riding through the high country near Tuolumne Meadows. Late in the afternoon, they arrived at the Sunrise High Sierra Camp, a set of cabins at 9,400 feet. Stacy, a keen photographer, wanted to take pictures of a nearby lake. Her dad told her to swap her sandals for sturdy hiking boots. A 77-year-old man from their group, named Gerald, offered to go with her. And what happened next is the heart of a mystery that's lasted for over 40 years. Stacy and Gerald started the short hike. The camp sat on a hill, and others in the group could see them walking down a granite slope. The altitude is high, and after a short distance, Gerald got tired and sat on a rock to rest, still in view of the camp. A guide watched him sit down. He saw Stacy, a little further on, stand on a rock as if framing a photo. She then walked a bit further, passed behind a small stand of trees, and disappeared from view. That was the last time anyone ever saw Stacy Eris. After 20 or 30 minutes, Gerald walked back to the cabins and raised the alarm. Concern quickly turned into a full-blown search. They called her name. Nothing. The National Park Service launched one of the most intensive searches in Yosemite's history. For 9 days, over 100 people, searchers, climbers, dog teams, and divers who checked the icy lakes, combed the area. A helicopter crisscrossed the landscape, and they found almost nothing. The only trace of Stacy ever recovered was the lens cap from her camera, found near where she was last seen. There were no footprints. The search dogs couldn't pick up a scent. There were no scraps of her clothing, no sign of a struggle, and no evidence of an animal attack, which experts said was highly unlikely anyway. She was just gone. After 9 days, the official search was called off. With no evidence, theories started to fly. Could she have run away? Park officials hinted at this, but her family fiercely denied it. Why plan a runaway in such a remote place, miles from any road? What about foul play? An unkempt young hiker was reportedly seen in the area but was never found for questioning. But an abduction, while people were watching from a distance, seems nearly impossible. This has led to stranger theories. The case is a cornerstone of the controversial Missing 411 phenomenon, which looks at bizarre disappearances in national parks. Proponents point to the lack of scent for the dogs and the complete absence of clues as evidence of something beyond a normal explanation. Adding to the mystery is the secrecy around the official investigation. The National Park Service case file on Stacy is known to be extensive, yet it remains almost entirely sealed from the public. Investigators have allegedly told researchers they would never get this case, fueling speculation about what, exactly, they're hiding. Stacy's parents passed away never knowing what happened to their daughter. The mystery of the girl who walked behind a tree remains one of Yosemite's most haunting cold cases. She didn't get lost on a forgotten trail, but in a matter of seconds, she stepped from a known space into a total void, leaving behind nothing but a camera lens and a question that echoes through the mountains. How can a person, in plain sight one moment, simply be gone the next? The stories of Geraldine Largay, Chris Fowler, and Stacey Harris are separated by decades and thousands of miles. Yet they're all tied together by the same terrifying truth. The wilderness is unforgiving, and it can claim a life with a chilling finality. Geraldine's heartbreaking journal tells a story of how even a well-marked trail can become a prison the moment you step off it. Her ordeal shows how hard it can be to find someone in a landscape designed to conceal. Chris Fowler's disappearance is a ghost story, a testament to the raw power of nature. He walked into a storm that erased one of the most famous trails in the world, leaving behind no clues at all. And Stacey Harris's vanishing is maybe the most unsettling. In a busy camp, in the middle of the afternoon, she stepped behind a tree and was gone, leaving a void filled only by 4 decades of questions. These cases force us to remember that when we enter the wilderness, we're entering a world with its own rules. The trails we follow are fragile lifelines in a vast and indifferent place. For Geraldine, we have a tragic answer. For Chris and Stacy, we only have silence. It leaves you to wonder what other stories are out there, buried in the undergrowth of America's vanishing trails. What other secrets does the wilderness keep?